am live. It is the 5th of May and I'm reading the Awakening Letters, Varieties of Spiritual Experiences in the Life After Death. This is written by Cynthia, Lady Sandys, and Rosamond Lehman. Both lost their daughters very young, Sally and Patricia. They both died in tragic circumstances, and it is Patricia and Sally who are transmitting information from the afterlife to Lady Sandys with letters. And this is a compilation of these letters. They worked on this over 30 years. This was published in 1979, and I'm here in the 5th part of this book, which are letters from Joe, who is the brother of Lady Cynthia. What was his full name? Anyway, he's called Joe. And I am here reading Our Greater Selves. It's a letter from Joe. Synth, this is better. I'm leading the most extraordinary life. I haven't any set residence, as you might say, but I found myself thinking with longing of Scarba. And I'm there. It's very different on this plane, and yet just the same. I find I'm extremely close to Douglas. He has made the Scarba on this plane, which seems to be immediately above the physical island, into his earth base. He and Father together seem to have drawn down various rays which make one feel absolutely marvelous. After feeling ill for so long, I can't express to you what this abundance of health and strength means to me. As this is Douglas's earth base, he is always so to be found here in some form. That is another strange development. He leaves a part of himself here and calls it his extra body, but it need not look like a body. It can be a burn, a rock, or an animal, which holds his personality and becomes his acting self, while his greater self is elsewhere. I had no idea about our greater selves. Douglas has made complete contact with his, but most of us are broken pieces. The earth life body seems only to have held a small part of me, and there is a much nicer Joe, in fact far too nicer Joe, who is waiting for me, the imperfect Joe, to take over. It's all right outside my sphere of thought, and I sometimes feel so puzzled by it all that I long to go back to the simplicity of earth life, even under the Labour government. But those moods don't last for long. Everything is so much more intense here. You all count so much vitality in my life. I began to realize in a quite terrifying way how truly and immeasurably I was attached to Lorna. It's not only a one-life attachment, and she can't shake me off now, whatever she does. I find we all have all belonged together for centuries, if such things as centuries exist. So I have got to try and help all of you, as you cannot avoid helping me. It's almost interesting. Patricia, urges me to gather a substance which she calls oomph. It's a special kind of energy which can flow between you and me, and it allows me this power to set down my thoughts and feelings and release an immensity of vagueness out of my system. You have no idea how refreshed and free I feel after I have written a letter through you. I can't write any more now, but let me do this again tomorrow. Here's another letter. The Sea Journey 1. This is my attempt to explain to you something of the vast extent of your planet, of which you and all mankind have no idea. The sea. We were a party, Pat, Douglas, Olga, Arthur, and Richard, my brother-in-law, says Cynthia. Some had already been part of the way before, but we were intending to go further. Armed with our knowledge of some of the higher worlds and the wonderful escape route of Chartres, we entered the sea from Iona and followed the coastline, sinking slowly because of the innumerable caverns, lighted now by our own etheric light, and by the 1,000 rays that each separate vibration emits from its own personal wavelength. I must pause here and explain your blindness. Light exists everywhere and at all times, but you couldn't live with the intense light that surrounds you. Every single thing in this room is emitting sound and light. Your blankets, the pillows, the carpet. But what a jazzed up world it would be if you could see and hear it all. Your houses would be much simpler and have far less conflicting furniture inside them. But to go back to the sea, we can open or close the ability to see and hear, and so we proceeded with full consciousness. The underworld of the sea around our west coast islands is absolutely entrancing. It is fairyland, untouched by the desecration of man. I could have lingered there forever, but the others pressed on. As we left the surface, life became more of the snake-like variety. We do not register cold, but I could see its effects upon the marine vegetation. Other strange lights began to glow over certain places, and these we found to be holes or tunnels leading down into the earth or the ocean. This was again a radiance quite different from earth, and a cadence of sound or music which I cannot define seemed to have a mesmeric power, not one which dulled our senses, but sharpened them. I followed with the rest down the tunnel, which seemed to be lined with gold. The light issuing from it was dazzling. On and on it led until I was beginning to wonder if we should soon arrive in New Zealand. Then the light changed, and there seemed to be a rush of air bringing the scent of flowers and trees. It felt almost earthly, and we emerged from our tunnel onto a promontory of radiance which is quite indescribable. I turned to Arthur. He had penetrated this way before and was accustomed to the change. Suddenly we met other beings like ourselves who were exploring, and others who had made the journey long ago and found this strange oasis of light and used it for the development of other senses. I can't tell you how exciting it was and how I strained every nerve to absorb and understand all around me, which I couldn't possibly have done without this strange mesmeric vibration, which seemed to be keeping me on my toes all the time. We were led into a big circle of people, some of whom I began to recognize from other lives, and with a sudden burst of recognition, I saw the monk from Iona, whose boatman I had been long ago. I knew it was the same man, but grown even more dynamic and very far advanced, and now, to me, even godlike. I seized his hand and we reclaimed each other. It was the strangest moment. Had I not been kept sane by the presence of Pat and Douglas, I think I should have dissolved into nothingness. That is the feeling these experiences give me, that one is slouching off more and more of the useless bits of one's personality, with an awful dread that soon there may be nothing left. But Pat and Douglas just laughed at my fears. Sea Journey 2. I should like to finish my description of my first undersea journey. I left you on the promontory of light, where the old monk from Iona had made a centre, or from where I could say the ionic power originally stemmed. I was told, having been shown the power centers on the surface of the earth, that I was now going to be shown where they came from and how they emerged. We all knew that the power from Iona dated from prehistoric times, and that the monks were led to gather and protect it. But how did it first originate? Leaving our oasis of light, we passed into an atmosphere of blueness, very like the earth's sky. Neither water nor land appear solid to us. We can pass through all natural substances, and I was told we were actually passing through the so-called solid earth. In the beginning, when the planets of our own solar system were created, a vast explosion of divine force was allowed to enter the nebulae, and working from the very center of each and every cloud of this gaseous element, the force began to circulate, and by doing so in a circular method, started the first element of movement and growth and power. And as the worlds became ready to support life, the motion system continued throughout all creation, the flow of the tides and seasons. The flow of the blood was then created as the bearer of the divine current of life. And so into every living, moving entity, movement became life in all its different rhythms. We were being shown as much as we could accept, and I began to wonder if my power of acceptance was equal to the task. This complete loss of the tangible feeling of earth, which was now to me no more than an extended sky, was cutting the ground from beneath my feet with a vengeance. I said this to Douglas, and he laughed and replied, "Hold on to the thought of the physical being real. This is only another form of it, and we don't want you to lose touch with the earth for a long time yet. You are such a good link on paper." So feeling the warmth from all this praise, I kept on saying to myself, only earth in another form. Water turned to vapor, and we moved on. Sometimes we passed through beams of light, obviously making for the earth's surface center. These became more and more frequent, until I became aware of a new sense altogether. I can't describe it. There was a deep, thunderous roar, which, though thunderous, was never deafening. It was more like some gigantic heart beating and throbbing in such a personal way that each one of us seemed to respond as though we had ceased to be separate individuals, and were instead all linked up with a vast throbbing force. Instead of feeling unable to absorb anymore, I felt refreshed and strong, as though I was being filled with energy, like the blowing up of a balloon. I was growing larger, at least I felt like it. I looked at Pat and Douglas to see if they had changed, and I had the same odd sensation, which came to me at Christmas when they took me into the upper ether, and we all became invisible to each other. Here it was again, this great Christ power surging through us, making and remaking every cell in our crystal clear bodies. This, I was told, was the center of the earth, the powerhouse from which all life has sprung, and towards this all physical life must return. So I stopped this here. There is a few more from Joe, Cynthia's brother.